an accidental project, which was just sort of like a, "Hey, what do you think?" to now being in about 29 countries is blowing our minds. Yeah, as of yesterday, right? So, I'm kind of flabbergasted in many ways that there are so many people out there doing harm, but I'm also one to be that sort of, people talk about half glass full, glass half empty, and I'm the glass doesn't exist kind of person. You just do what you can and you counteract it with the best way you can, and this is it, right? Knowledge is power that no one can take away from you, and if we're able to equip you with that, and that's what Ruth really does, then we've done our job, right? Because we've trained you to be more vigilant about yourself and your family online.
That was Megs Shah, founder of the Parasol Cooperative and creators of the Digital Guardian app, RUTH. Walking through TechCrunch Disrupt 2024, I wasn't expecting to confront one of tech's darkest secrets. But at the Parasol Cooperative's booth, founder Megs Shah and COO Sandy Scalaney opened my eyes to an unsettling reality. Our everyday devices are becoming weapons of abuse in ways most of us never notice. Digital abuse is evolving faster than our ability to spot it. Listen to Sandy show us what tech abuse is really about.
I really want to say, what is the problem? I want people to really understand what it is we're looking at here. Ruth is one of our products. Ruth is our generative AI digital guardian, our chatbot that helps people identify and navigate situations of domestic violence, human trafficking, and tech facilitated abuse. And I think over the years, we've had developed an understanding of what domestic violence is, what human trafficking is, even. We've done a fairly good job of educating people around those things. But the field of tech enabled abuse, tech facilitated abuse, has grown exponentially. Okay, we're talking about sextortion, deep fakes, revenge porn, even, every organizations that are working with survivors of domestic violence report that 98% of the survivors they're working with are experiencing technology related abuse.
Technology abuse. This is where Ruth comes in. The app, which has been soon launching, aims to be a knowledge hub for anyone facing tech enabled abuse. Students dealing with online harassment, parents worried about digital safety, survivors trying to secure their devices and technology. What Ruth aims to do is give specific, actionable guidance without overwhelming users. What sets it apart isn't just the privacy first approach in early testing, it's how it connects users to verified resources and support networks while demystifying the tech threats they don't really understand. As Megs and Sandy explain, many people don't realize they're experiencing tech abuse until someone helps them recognize the signs. Sort of like what happened to Megs when she began Parasol Cooperative.
I mean, it's kind of how this all started, right? Like I was trying to keep up with my son playing video games, and I could not figure out what he was doing on there, and I was worried about the whole sextortion thing, so I went on to OpenAI and I asked a question about how do you talk about sextortion with your teenager, and it basically said, "Sorry, it's out of policy." And the technologist in me didn't accept that answer, and I was like, "Oh hell no, this is not this can't be." And I went on to, at the time, I think Party Rock, which was one of the AWS's products that was out there. I started playing around with it, and it's since been rebranded to something else. But we found another alternative to try, and surprisingly, it was giving me back some really robust responses when when I prompted it the right way. And so I sent it over to Sandy, and I have this thing every time I get on a call, and I say that, so I did a thing, and everybody on the call at work just goes, "Oh no, here we go." And this is how Ruth was introduced to the team. So I was like, I did a thing. Can you guys maybe try it out and see what you think? And so we got it out to a whole lot of our research colleagues that we were working with already. We got it out to individuals that are in the field doing the work, to survivors that have actually been working with the organization kind of as research participants, and found that we can make this really robust tool, right? And I think in one of your old podcasts as well, you had mentioned it's sort of like this tailored LLM that you can have that's specific to the task at hand, right? And I think in this instance, Ruth really, really shined. As we started to ask more and more questions, we were trying to figure out how do we engage with it differently. And the use cases just, we didn't even envision some of these use cases, and they started happening, and it was beautifully handled as part of the chat. So, an accidental project, which was just sort of like a, hey, what do you think? To now being in about 29 countries is blowing our minds. Yeah, as of yesterday, right? So, I'm kind of flabbergasted in many ways that there are so many people out there doing harm. But I'm also one to be that sort of people talk about half glass full, glass half empty, and I'm the glass doesn't exist kind of person. So, um, you just do what you can, and you counteract it with the best way you can. And this is it, right? Knowledge is power that no one can take away from you. And if we're able to equip you with that, and that's what Ruth really does, then we've done our job, right? Because we've trained you to be more vigilant about yourself and your family online.
So Ruth is trauma informed, and so the responses come back in a sensitive, empathetic manner. I'm sorry you're going through this. Also checking in, are you in a safe place? Are your devices compromised? Do you think they might be? Things like that. So it directs you in a way where it's saying like your safety is important, right? So like, how are we going to deal with this situation? And I think that that's really, really important, as opposed to, as we were contrasting it with the kind of standard LLMs that are just kind of dry output. But the other side of that is that there's a lot of pushback on empathetic AI right now too. Okay, so empathetic AI and the ones that are kind of pretending to be human can also be very problematic. And so Ruth is not that either. Okay, Ruth is very clear that they're providing sensitive responses, making sure they're checking in with your safety and all of that. But also at the same time, I'm still an AI. I'm not a human being. And then on top of that, yeah, acts like an advocate, like a therapist, kind of plays this role, has some, some of this functionality. But the best thing that I've seen, the use case, advocates, victim service professionals that I've given this to Ruth to use, it absolutely supercharges their work. 100%. Like the combination of human and Ruth is like the best combination for this. And I'm saying because advocates are trained in mental health, they are not trained in digital safety planning, you know? So being able to give them a tool so that they can sit down and do a case plan with the survivors that they're working with, and a safety plan with them on how to be physically safe and all of this stuff. And they can use this tool to come up with, here's the step by step. How do we take care of this device that you have that's compromised? What do we do about this? How do you make sure you're not being like and just a kind of instructions on how to do each one of those steps. It absolutely supercharges their work. They're over the top. Once you introduce this to the people that are out there kind of intersecting in this world where they see these harms happening to people or they're experiencing them, they are so like jazzed about what we've built that they're automatically introducing it to their whole team.
And what I really love that you're not doing is that you don't make the user feel, especially these users, which is a wide variety, wide net, but you're not making them feel observed.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a really cool way. You're making them feel safe. And that's such a not only hard thing to do, but if I'm a new user, sort of walk me through how I've just heard about you. Is it the tone, the language, the resources? I know you can't say what exactly it is, but what's sort of the mix that develops that really cool trust, which is just so awesome?
Now you're asking for the secret sauce. I'm just saying.
Yes, I am. I want the code too.
I'm just joking. So I think a couple of things, right? So we could have easily just put a chatbot out there and said, "Hey, try it out," right? But as I mentioned before, we are very much survivor focused, and what that means is in everything we do, we try to take into account a couple of things. Is how would this make me feel if I was the one asking these questions? And I think we need to be able to have it respond in such a way that feels like you're talking to a friend more than a doctor, right? And to do that, it really does require a lot of training, a lot of testing, a lot of prompt engineering, right? In this instance, to ensure that as you get the responses back, that it's not just a clear cut and dry. And, we had done the soft launch at the end of June, which was sort of just this like clunky model that we put out there. And it was something that we were using, but it was still pretty robust. But we learned a lot from the time we soft launched to the time we got to our hard launch, which was mid September, that there were certain ways that it was responding that just didn't make sense, right? And our goal was really to try to make it to where the language barriers could be broken down, which is one of the bigger issues that we deal with in this space, right? Is not being able to support immigrants who may not speak the same language as us. And the second piece of it was really to make sure that we're always making sure the end user feels safe. And that is really, with the questioning, the way it questions, what it's asking for, and just making sure that safety planning is sort of the mindset almost that this AI has, so that you're not encountering some major issues as part of the dialogue that you have with it. So, you know, I could say it's all just in prompt engineering. It isn't. It is prompt engineering. It's testing and validating. It's making sure that the LLM model that you're using is actually responding the way that it is. Like we tested, I think it was 3 different models that we tested, but I think it was important to make sure that we picked the right large language model, right? And for us, we landed on Anthropic because we felt that was the most robust model that we could find with the responses that it was giving and the way that we would be able to tailor it. So, you know, will we change down the line if we find a better model? Sure. We've built our backend in such a way that we can switch it out at any time. But the goal here really was to make sure that the prompting is done correctly, that the context that we provided is done correctly, and also that the model that we choose to use is also something that's robust enough to address these types of issues.
And the thing that got me excited when I first met at your booth was that you're not actually tracking the user. Yay. Like, oh my God, right? No, but it's so, we're like, what are you going to do with that data? Oh, we're just,
Yes.
fair use. It's that weird, I mean, you're using RAG, LangChain, AWS Cloud, just a really smart setup, but you don't, what they being the greater they,
Yeah.
don't fine tune like they do. You don't update all the time. And last question is, where do you get some of the sources of information? Because this is such a volatile, space, to be able to get accurate information and be able to feed that LLM, which actually keeps it safer, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So, when we first started doing this, we knew we didn't want to fine tune because fine tuning requires a whole slew of updates, constant updates to be made for it to be more relevant and so that it doesn't hallucinate. You know, but even then it hallucinates quite a lot because you don't know every possible scenario. And so having a RAG lane chain model kind of gives you that flexibility to not only update the information that it's referencing before it sends it to the LLM to kind of come back with the appropriate response, but it gives us the ability to update the research, right? So, and I'll talk a little more about that research, but Sandy's probably a good person to respond to that side of it. Um, the research part of it is critical because every day technology is changing and evolving. Every day there's new ways people are finding to abuse. There's how do you train it to be trauma informed? How do you give it the right information in terms of the intersection of tech and abuse, right? Because that could be an evolving target. So to fine tune it would require quite a lot of resources, but also it wouldn't always be accurate, right? Because sometimes it just retains it in memory and it doesn't really update accordingly. So we decided to go down the Ragling chain route for that reason to give us that flexibility. But also, it's just a better model for right now until the reasoning models come out, which is when we'll likely start to use some of those as well. But a large portion of what Ruth responds with is a research backed set of data, right? And Sandy, if you want to hit on that a little bit in terms of, just what research is out there and how we're leveraging some of that.
I mean, I think that what's important is that we use vetted data. Um, part of the what happens in the LLM models that people complain about, right, is the garbage in, garbage out. If you're just constantly recycling conspiracy and all kinds of things, who knows what's going to come out. So we just want to make sure that it's trained using, scholarly research, especially on being trauma informed. Information that's publicly available information from national reputable organizations doing victim services work, things like that. And so far, um, we've just been getting quite a high degree of accuracy, especially even with resources that Ruth will give you resources for getting help in, Kandahar, Afghanistan, Algiers. We've tested it all over the world in kind of very remote places, and it seems to be giving like accurate resources and information. So
And some of that is actually in the LLM itself, right? So some of that trained data that's available is from the LLM. There are certain resources, obviously, that we have as well that we've kind of injected into the data set for context purposes, right? But I think at the end of the day, when we started to figure out what it is from a survivor perspective you really need is who do I call? I'm in this situation. What do I do? And kind of better understand their circumstances, right? And so Ruth was really trained to be that sort of guardian almost, to provide that and to kind of circle back on your point about collecting data. Like I've been in data for God knows how long, right? And I've been on the side of let's collect every possible piece of information we can about a person so we know exactly where they are, when they are, and how often they go there and all of that, right? And I think I've come to the realization now, sort of being on that survivor side of the mindset here, is that could re-victimize people, right? And the goal for us is really to ensure we're not doing that, that we're not participating in that. And when you go to our site to use Ruth, we do not collect any emails. We do not collect your name. We even tell you, don't give us all this information. We don't need it. And when you exit the chat, the data goes away. We don't use that data to train. We don't use that data to analyze right now. We may in the future want to use it for quality assurance just to make sure that the model is responding the way we need it to. But there's different ways to capture that as well. So, AI isn't perfect. Ruth isn't perfect. And so we also provide a feedback form for individuals so that they can submit, information to us saying, hey, I asked for this. This just didn't seem correct. And you please fix it. And we do our best to try to prioritize those. In some cases, we can do it quickly. Some cases, it takes a little while. So it just kind of varies, I think.
and I think that privacy piece is, by far one of the most important pieces, because then you're able to actually give the context of what's happening without fear of that information being in somebody else's hand or being used for other purposes.
I think the power of what Ruth has to offer, we want to be able to get into as many hands as possible. And the only way to do that is to continue to talk about it, to continue to partner with
Yeah.
organizations, and to continue to do the best work we can possibly do, which is just focus on the tech that protects.
If people want to get in touch with you and want to know about Ruth, where's the best places to reach you and how can they get in touch and help you?
Yeah, I think the best method, if anybody is also looking to connect with us, is to go to our website. There's a contact us page, submit, a connection there. And I think, Sandy's just fantastic when it comes to these partnerships, and I'm probably the one that's hindering her progress most of the time because I'm like, where did I put this? And I think, all joking aside, I do think that connecting with us through the site would be immensely helpful, and either myself or Sandy, most likely Sandy, but we will follow up and make sure that we can do this. I would say that if there is one thing people can do as individuals, this problem is a huge problem, and when we as human beings face a big problem, we tend to shut down. And all I'll say is don't shut down. Use Ruth's help, and when you can, go online. And if you found Ruth to be helpful to you in any form or to someone donate. Every single penny that you donate goes to making sure that we can build products that are easily accessible, free, and are actually solving problems to protect people's lives as we start to go forward. So, donations go a long way, especially, for an organization like ours that is technically a tech startup, which is a nonprofit, and it's an oxymoron at that point, right? To say the two things together, but I do appreciate all the people that have donated to our organization so far, and including organizations and individuals. And that's really what keeps us going, right? And if you have stories, if you used Ruth, um, send it to us, right? We love to hear that because that gives us a bit more fire to deal with every single day with the work that we're doing. So just keep it coming.